So listen, good evening,
C'est une grosse
everyone.
journée aujourd'hui.
This is a big day,
Grosse étape. Je commence
a
avec une
big
bonne
step.
nouvelle.
I will start
On
with
vous
some
avait
good news.
dit qu'on
We
visait
had
à
told
ce que
you that we were
75% des
targeting
adultes au
that
Québec
75% of
soient
adults in
vaccinés
Quebec
d'ici le
be
24 juin.
vaccinated before the
Je vous annonce
24th of
que,
June. Well,
on
I'm
va
announcing to
réviser
you
cette date-là
that
pour le
we are
15
going to be
juin.
reviewing
Donc,
the date for the
bravo à
15th
l'équipe
of
de
June now. So
Christian qui a
bravo to
réussi
Christian's team.
non seulement
They
à
have
rencontrer notre
succeeded
objectif,
not
mais
only in
à
reaching
le
that
devancer.
objective,
Merci à toute
but to do
l'équipe. On
so
me dit en
ahead of
plus
time.
que
Thank
ça
you
se
for the
passe dans la
entire
bonne
team.
humeur, avec
I've been told that
efficacité.
people are doing
Et
so
évidemment,
efficiently,
je veux
in a
tout de
good
suite
mood.
dire que je
And
suis
of
très
course, I wish to right
impressionné
away say that I
de
am
voir les
very
Québécois, comment
impressed
ils ont
to
bien
see
répondu.
Quebecers, the way
On a
that they
vu ça
have
au cours des
responded
dernières
so well.
semaines.
We've
Ça a
seen it
été
in the course of the
génération
past
par
few weeks.
génération.
It's been
Les
generation
Québécois
per
se sont
generation.
présentés, ont fait leur devoir de
Quebecers
citoyens. Je ne
did
cacherai pas
their
qu'on avait une
duty as
petite inquiétude
citizens.
du côté des jeunes.
I won't keep it from you
mais
that we
les
did
jeunes
have a
sont au
small worry
rendez-vous. Donc,
about the young people,
je ne peux
but
pas
they
vous
are
exprimer
there.
comment je suis fier
So I cannot
des
express
Québécois
how
aujourd'hui. Puis c'est
proud I
grâce
am of
à
Quebecers
vous
today,
autres
and it is
si on
thanks
peut
to you
annoncer ce
if
plan
we can
complet
announce
de
this
déconfinement pour
complete
les prochaines
plan
semaines, les
to put
prochains
an
mois.
end to the lockdown
Comme
in the
vous
following
allez le
weeks and
voir, et
months.
puis comme vous en
As you'll
doutiez,
be able to see,
c'est
and
un
as you
plan
probably
où on y va prudemment,
thought, we
graduellement.
are going prudently with this
D'abord,
plan.
il
We're
restait
going
quelques
gradually.
petits endroits
So
où il y avait
first,
des
there's
mesures
a few
d'urgence,
places
au
left where there were
Bas-Saint-Laurent.
emergency measures,
Donc,
for example, in
dès
the lower
lundi
St.
prochain,
Lawrence. So
toutes
as of
les
next
écoles,
Monday,
vont
all
pouvoir
schools
ouvrir,
are going to be
sauf là
able
où
to
il y a
open up again,
quelques éclosions,
except
mais
in those
là, dans
places where there
toutes les
are
régions,
a few outbreaks. But
les
now in
écoles
all
vont être ouvertes,
regions,
primaires,
schools will be
secondaires.
open.
Il
Primary
reste dans
schools,
les zones
secondary
rouges,
schools
les 3, 4,
in
5,
red
secondaires
zones
3, 4, 5 qui sont en
will
alternance,
be
mais je vais
secondary 3, 4,
vous en
5
parler
that
tantôt.
are,
Puis moi, je le répète,
going
c'est
to
ma plus
school
grande fierté.
one
Je pense
day
que
and then
beaucoup de
another day
Québécois ont
at
fait des
home,
efforts
school, home learning.
spéciaux pour
But I
que
repeat,
nos
I
jeunes
think a
restent
lot
à
of
l'école. Le
Quebecers have
Québec,
made
c'est
a lot of
des
efforts so
endroits
that
au
our
monde où au cours de la
students
dernière
stay in
année, on
school.
a gardé nos
Quebec is one of the
écoles
places in the
ouvertes
world
le
where,
plus de
in the entire
jours.
world,
Donc,
we've
je
been
pense
able
que
to keep
c'est
the
un choix
schools
de
open
société,
the most
c'est une
days.
belle
I think it is a choice that we made as a
ça
society.
honore
It shows
notre
great solidarity,
nation.
and it honors
Donc,
our
allons-y
nation.
avec le plan. D'abord, d'ici lundi,
So let's
le
go with the plan.
31 mai,
So by Monday, the
la grande
31st of
majorité
May,
des
the
régions
vast
vont
majority
passer
of
au
regions
orange. Ça
will
veut dire quoi,
go
le orange?
to orange
Je le
zone.
rappelle,
What
ça veut
does
dire
orange
d'abord
mean?
que
I'd like
les
to
élèves
make a
de
reminder.
secondaire
First,
3,
it
4,
means
5
that secondary 3, 4,
vont
and
aller à
5
plein
students
temps à
will
l'école.
be able to go
Et
to
ça
school
veut dire
full
que
time.
les restaurants
And it also
vont
means that
rouvrir. Donc,
restaurants
d'ici le
will be
31
able to
mai,
reopen. So by the
la majorité des
31st of
régions
May,
vont se joindre
most
à la
regions will
Mauricie,
be
Centre du
able
Québec et
to join
Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean qui
Mauricie,
sont
Centre du
déjà
Québec, and the
orange,
Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean that are already in
pour
orange zone.
avoir droit à ces mesures d'assouplissement.
So to be
Ensuite,
able to go
deuxième
with
étape,
these
le
measures.
14
Second
juin,
step,
au plus
the
tard le 14
14th
juin,
of June, at the
la
very latest, the
majorité
14th
des
of
régions
June,
du Québec vont
most
passer
regions
au
in
jaune.
Quebec will
Ça veut
go
dire
to
quoi, le
yellow
jaune?
zone.
Ça
And
veut
what does
dire
yellow
que
mean?
les personnes qui
It
résident
means that
deux
people who
endroits, donc dans
reside
deux maisons,
in two
peuvent
different
se
places,
voir
so in two
dans
homes,
les maisons,
different
dans
homes,
une des deux maisons.
can
Ça veut dire
go
aussi que
to
tous
one
les
another's
sports
homes.
d'équipe
It also means that
incluant
all
avec contact
team
à
sports,
l'extérieur,
including with
vont pouvoir
contact, played
recommencer donc, au plus
outside,
tard,
will be able to
le
start
14 juin
again.
dans
So
toute part,
that
dans la
is on the
majorité
latest,
des
the
régions.
14th
Les
of June,
bars
in
vont
most
pouvoir
regions.
ouvrir aussi, donc,
Bars
au
will
plus
be
tard,
able to open as well.
le 14
At
juin.
the
Il y
latest,
avait
on the
déjà des
14th
régions, il y a
of June.
déjà des régions qui
There are
sont
already
jaunes.
regions, there already are some regions that are in
la
yellow,
Gaspésie,
Abitibi,
l'île de la
Témiscamingue,
Madeleine,
the
le nord du Québec.
Gaspésie, Île de la
À partir de
Madeleine, the
lundi,
northern area of Quebec,
ça va être la
and
côte
as
nord.
of Monday, it will
Donc,
be the
dans
Côte Nord
majorité
as
des
well.
régions,
So,
le
in
14.
most regions,
Troisième étape,
the 14th of
si
June.
le
Third step,
28 juin,
by the
la majorité
28th
des
of
régions
June,
au Québec
most
vont
regions in
passer
Quebec
au vert. Ça veut dire quoi,
will
le vert?
go to green
Ça veut
zone.
dire
And what does green
10
mean?
personnes
It means
provenant
10
de
people
3 résidences
coming from
vont
3
pouvoir se voir
residences
dans les maisons.
will be
Ça
able
veut dire
to
aussi
gather in people's homes.
qu'on recommence tous les sports
It also
d'équipe
means
à
that we
l'intérieur.
will start all
ça veut dire,
inside team
aussi,
sports,
si on pense
which
3
means as
résidences,
well,
10
if we're
personnes,
thinking,
on peut appeler
3
ça des
residences,
petits
10
parties.
people, we can call them
Donc, ça va faire
little
plaisir à beaucoup
parties,
de
if
monde.
you
En tout cas,
will.
ça me fait plaisir.
So it's going to make a
à
lot
moi,
of people
je
happy.
vous
At least it
garantis.
makes me happy.
J'annonce
I
aussi
can guarantee
que
that to
des
you.
mesures
I'm also
de
announcing
déconfinement
that
vont s'appliquer dans
end of
toutes
lockdown
les
measures
régions du
will be
Québec
applicable in all regions
3
of
étapes.
Quebec
D'abord, le
in 3 different
28
steps.
mai,
First,
donc
the
vendredi,
28th
pas cette
of May,
semaine,
so
vendredi de la semaine
Friday, not of
prochaine,
this week, but
il va y avoir
of the
5
following,
assouplissements
there
dans
will be
toutes les régions du
5
Québec.
lightening
On va lever
of
complètement
measures in
les
everywhere in
couvre-feux
Quebec.
partout
First,
au
we are
Québec.
going to
2,
remove all
les
curfews
terrasses des
everywhere in
restaurants
Quebec.
vont être ouvertes
2, the
partout,
terraces of
donc
restaurants will be
28
opened
mai.
everywhere. So
Troisièmement,
on
les
the 20th of
rassemblements
May.
dans les cours arrière des
Third,
maisons,
gatherings
ça
in
va être
people's
limité à 8
backyards
personnes, mais ça va maintenant être
will be
permis.
limited to
Les
8 people, but
déplacements
it will
entre
be
les
allowed.
régions vont être permis.
Moving
Ceux qui
between
veulent aller en
regions
vacances
will
ou
be
en
allowed,
visite,
so that
dans
means that
certaines
people who want to
régions,
visit,
ça va
who
être
want to
permis.
go on vacation to
Les
certain areas, it
salles
will be allowed.
et les
And
stades, on
stadiums
va avoir
and
une limite de 250
venues, we're
personnes
going to
par
have a limit of
section.
250
Total,
people per section,
2500 personnes.
total
Donc, ceux qui sont
2,500
capables d'avoir
people.
plusieurs
So
entrées,
those who can
contrôler les
have
groupes
many
en les
different
laissant
entrances
dans une
and control
section,
groups
ça peut
by
être,
leaving them in one
au
section,
balcon, en
it
bas.
can be
Donc,
balcony
on va
and
pouvoir
then,
avoir
a
jusqu'à,
lower section.
2500
We can
personnes.
have
Donc, ça,
up to
c'est le
2,500
28
people.
mai.
So that is
Ensuite,
the
le 11
28th
juin,
of May. And then
partout
the
au
11th
Québec,
of
les
June,
terrasses des bars
everywhere in
vont
Quebec,
pouvoir
bar
ouvrir.
terraces are going
Et
to be able
finalement,
to
le
open.
25 juin,
And finally, the
à partir du
25th
25
of
juin,
June,
partout au Québec,
as of the 25th of
les
June,
personnes qui
everywhere
vont
in
avoir
Quebec,
reçu un vaccin avec les
people who
2
will have
doses
received
vont pouvoir
both
se
zones,
visiter,
both doses
dans
of the
les
vaccine will be able to
maisons,
visit
sans
in
masque,
people's
sans
homes without
distanciation.
masks, without
Les camps de
physical
jour et
distancing.
les camps de vacances vont
Day
ouvrir,
camps
donc à partir
and
du
vacation camps will
25
be
juin.
opened as
Tous
of the
les
25th of June.
festivals, je sais qu'il y en a beaucoup qui
And
avaient
all
hâte
festivals, I know
de
that there's a
savoir,
lot
les
who were
festivals
looking
donc,
forward
sont en plein air,
to
où il n'y
see
a pas des places désignées.
outside festivals
parlait
where there's no
des
assigned
endroits où il y a des
seating.
places désignées,
We're
à
talking
partir
about
du
places
25
where there
juin,
are
même
assigned
s'il y a
seating.
des
As of
places
the
désignées,
25th of
il y aura
June,
plus
even if
de
there are
limite
no
de
assigned seats,
250
there
par
won't be any more
section, ça
limit
va
of
être
250 per
2500
section. It'll be
au total.
2,500 in total.
Autre étape, fin du mois d'août.
And
D'abord,
the end of
on se donne
August,
comme objectif
first,
que
we're
d'ici
giving
la
ourselves
fin
as
du
an
mois d'août,
objective that by the end of the month of
75% des
August,
personnes de 12 ans et
75%
plus
of people
soient
12 and
vaccinés
over
avec 2 doses.
be vaccinated
Si
with
on
2
atteint notre
doses.
objectif,
If we
très
reach our
confiant.
objective,
Bon,
and
d'abord,
I'm confident,
on n'aura plus besoin de porter
first,
de
we
masque
won't
dans la
need
plupart
to wear
des lieux
masks
publics
anymore
au
in
Québec.
most public places
Deuxièmement,
in Quebec. Secondly,
tous les jeunes, les étudiants dans
all
les
young
cégeps
people,
et les
students
universités
in
vont pouvoir
CEGEPs and universities will be
revenir en
able to
personne, donc ce qu'on appelle
go back and
présentiel,
learn in person.
donc pour la rentrée du mois d'août. Je pense que
So for
ça,
back to
ça me
school in
fait
the month of August, I think that
terriblement
that
plaisir. Je
is
sais que les jeunes ont
something that
beaucoup
makes me
souffert
so
au
happy. I know that the
les
young
derniers
people have
mois.
suffered a lot
Enfin,
in the course
ils
of the
vont pouvoir
past few
revenir
months.
à une vie,
They'll finally
plus
be able
normale.
to
Donc,
go
je
back
termine
to a more normal
en
life. So
vous
I'd like
demandant
to
2 choses.
end by asking you 2
continuez de
things.
respecter
First,
les consignes.
continue respecting
2,
the guidelines.
pour ceux qui ne sont
Second,
pas encore vaccinés,
for
allez vous
those who
faire
are
vacciner.
not vaccinated
Et
yet,
allez
please go
chercher
get
aussi, quand c'est
vaccinated.
votre tour,
And also
la
go get, when it
deuxième
comes
dose. Donc, je
your
pense
turn,
que
go get the
aujourd'hui,
second
on
dose.
voit,
So I think that
l'espoir
today
est
we
là.
can see it.
On
Hope
va
is
pouvoir
there.
recommencer
We will be
à
able
se
to
voir.
start
En tout cas, moi,
getting
ce
together
qui
once
me manque
again.
le plus, c'est
What
les
I miss
soupers
the
avec les
most personally
familles,
are
la famille,
dinners
les
with other
amis.
family
Mais ça, vous
members,
le
seeing
voyez,
family
on va
members,
pouvoir
seeing friends.
commencer avec
And
des gens
as you
de
can
2
see, we're going to be
maisons,
able to
puis après de
start
3
with people
maisons,
from
10
2 different
personnes.
households and then 3
Mais
different
pour ça,
households, 10 people.
ben, faut que
But
les
in order
Québécois
to
se
get
fassent
there,
vacciner.
Quebecers have to get vaccinated.
Vacciner, ça rime
And
avec
getting
l'été, ça rime
vaccinated
aussi avec
rhymes with
petit
summer in
party.
French, as
Donc,
well as with
gardons
little
ça en
party.
tête. Et
So
sérieusement,
let's keep
cet
that
été de
in mind.
liberté, je
And
pense
seriously, this
que
summer of
c'est vraiment
freedom,
mérité.
I
Personne ne l'aura
think that
volé.
it's very
Et
warranted.
je veux
We
vous
will
remercier tous les Québécois du fond du cœur.
certainly
C'est vraiment
be
un
happy. I
privilège
wish to
d'être,
thank
votre
Quebecers from the
premier
bottom of my
ministre.
heart. It
Merci
truly
beaucoup.
is a
Bonne
privilege to
soirée,
be
tout le
your
monde.
premier. Thank you very much, and I wish
Good
everyone
evening,
a good evening.
everyone. Good news. We're exceeding our goals with the vaccination campaign. Quebecers of all generations are fulfilling their duty. Thanks Thanks to your efforts, we can now announce a reopening plan. On Monday, students in regions with emergency measures will return to school. By May 31, our goal is for a majority of regions to turn orange. By June 14, our goal is for a majority of regions to turn yellow. And by June 28, our goal is for a majority of regions to turn green. Now, starting Friday next week, May 28, in all regions, the curfew will be lifted, restaurant terraces will reopen, gatherings of 8 people will be allowed in private yards, travel between regions will be authorized, and theaters and stadium, indoor and outdoor, will be allowed to welcome 250 people per section for a maximum of 2,500 people. Starting June 11, bar terraces will also reopen. Starting June 25, people who have received 2 doses of vaccine will be able to see each other in homes without mask and without distancing. Summer camps will reopen, and festivals will be authorized for up to 2,500 people without sections. By the end of August, if we reach our goal of 75% of the population over 12 with 2 doses, masks won't be mandatory in most public places. And CEGEPs and universities will reopen in person. So please continue to follow the rules and please get vaccinated with the first and second dose. Thank you.
Merci, Monsieur Legault, Monsieur Dubé et Dr. Arruda.
Thank you, Mr.
vont
Legault
répondre
and
aux questions des
Dubé, and
membres de la
Arruda
tribune
will
de la
now
presse du Parlement de
be
Québec.
answering
D'abord en
questions
français,
from the
ensuite en
members,
anglais. Louis Lacroix, Cogeco.
from the journalists who are present here.
Monsieur le Premier ministre, Monsieur le ministre de la Santé.
Hello, Mr.
Dr.
Premier,
Arruda.
Mr. Minister, Dr. Arruda.
Je vois qu'il y a quand même, on donne
I
beaucoup de
see that
liberté
we're giving a
aux
lot of
Québécois
freedoms
dans
to Quebecers
votre plan, donc on va
in
presque
your
avoir un
plan.
été normal.
So we're
jusqu'à un
almost
certain
going
point,
to have a normal summer to a certain extent.
Et ce que je comprends, c'est que c'est la situation au Québec.
And from what I
qui permet d'avoir
understand,
ça,
it is the situation in Quebec that allows us to see that. The
Mais c'est pas le cas dans
epidemiological
d'autres
situation is
provinces
improving,
et dans
but it's
d'autres
not the
pays.
case in other provinces.
Est-ce que vous
It's not the
craignez les
case in other
déplacements,
countries.
par
Do
exemple,
you
de
fear
gens qui pourraient venir de
travel from
l'Ontario?
people who might come from
Est-ce que
Ontario,
vous
for
voulez qu'on
example?
maintienne
Do you want
la quarantaine pour les gens qui arrivent de l'extérieur du pays?
quarantine
Votre
to
position
be maintained for
là-dessus,
people coming
qu'est-ce qu'elle est?
from
Est-ce que c'est
outside the
important, à
country?
votre
What
avis,
is your
d'éviter,
position on
là,
that? Is it
que les
important,
gens
in your
aillent dans d'autres
opinion,
provinces,
to
que des gens
avoid that
d'autres
people go
provinces,
to other
d'autres pays
provinces,
viennent
or
chez
that
nous?
people from
Est-ce
other
que l'urgence
provinces or
est
other
toujours
countries
présente?
come here?
Mais je pense
Is
que
the
c'est
emergency still
important
there?
de garder les mesures
Well, I
qu'on
think it
a
is important to
actuellement,
keep the
incluant,
measures that we have
la
right now,
quarantaine à
including
l'hôtel. Donc, c'est ce que je
the
lui dis, M.
quarantine at the
Trudeau,
hotel.
c'est ce que je
So that
maintiens
is what I
encore.
said to Mr. Trudeau,
Combien de
and
temps
that
est-ce que
is what I still
vous
maintain
pensez
today.
qu'on doit
For
limiter
how long
la
do you think
liberté
that
de
we
déplacement des
should
gens?
limit
Mais pour l'instant, on n'a pas
people's
fixé de
freedom
date
to move
limite,
around?
là, mais pour
Well, for
l'instant,
the
jusqu'à
time being,
nouvel
we don't
ordre, on
have
veut
a
garder
date,
les
but
mesures.
right now, up until
Alex Boissonneau,
for now, we are
Radio-Canada.
keeping the measures.
Bonjour, messieurs. Je comprends bien que le Québec est en meilleure position
I understand
maintenant
that Quebec
qu'à pareille
is
date l'an
better
dernier.
positioned now
Est-ce qu'il n'y a
than
pas
it
un risque de
was
pêcher par
at
excès
this
de
date
prudence
last
lorsqu'on
year.
parle des masques notamment?
Couldn't
Je sais qu'il y a des entreprises qui
we
nous ont contactés pour
be
demander
doing
quand
too
est-ce
much
qu'on va
with
pouvoir
masks,
laisser
and that there
tomber
are
le
companies that
masque
ask, when are we
au
going
bureau,
to be
dans les
able
lieux de
to
travail, à
just
l'extérieur
stop using
aussi. L'an
masks
dernier,
in
par exemple, à pareille
offices,
date, les enfants portaient pas de
workplaces,
masque en tout temps dans
outside?
les
For
écoles
example,
primaires.
last
Et là,
year,
de ce que je comprends du plan que vous
students
annoncez,
weren't
il va
wearing
y avoir un
masks
assouplissement
at
pour
this
le
time
port
last
du
year,
masque
and now I
seulement à la
understand
fin
that
du
there's
mois
going
de
to be a
juin, je
lightening
pense.
of the use of
Bon,
masks
peut-être
only at the
préciser ça,
end
là.
of
Donc,
June, I
qu'est-ce que
think.
ça veut dire lorsqu'on parle du port du masque?
What
Il y
does
a des
that
gens même qui
mean
se demandaient est-ce qu'on
when
va
we
changer
say
nos mœurs
wearing
un peu au
masks?
Québec
And there are
aussi? Est-ce qu'on
people
va
who are
prendre l'habitude de
wondering,
porter
are
le
we going
masque
to
peut-être à plus
change
long
things in
terme
Quebec? Are we
éventuellement?
going to make wearing the mask
Écoutez, je
more of a
comprends
habit?
qu'il y a les nouveaux variants qui sont un élément nouveau.
We have to understand that there are the new variants. That's new from last year. And also people have become more used to wearing the mask.
La saison
Probably
grippale
even
et
with
d'autres
the
éléments, les
flu
gens, certaines
season
personnes vont
and
prendre
other
le
elements,
masque et ça
certain
va avoir un
people will
impact sur
probably keep wearing the mask, and that will have an impact on transmission. I think that we have to consider that as long as we haven't reached the 2 doses, freeing people from mask is an element that has to be taken into consideration. But as we go forward, and as there are groups of people who will have received 2 doses and who know one another, we will be introducing more freedoms. I'm thinking, for example, if in the fall, say, all young people in the same household or guests, everybody's been vaccinated, will be able to, think of removing the mask then and getting a bit closer. But before having 2 doses, I think that it's too risky. And in certain outside activities where we don't know what people's status is either, it's still too early, but it's coming. It's also important to clear that the end of June is in homes where people have had both doses. And otherwise, in public places, it's the end of August, when 75% of people 12 and over will have received both doses. Another question, I would like to know, why is there a differentiated treatment between the bars and restaurants as far as the terraces are concerned? We understand that the restaurant terraces are opening earlier than the bar ones. There are people in bar owner associations, for example, who said that's what counts is the activity, it's not the nature of the business. So what did you base your decision on? If you'll allow, in every principle that we give, most particularly in the month of May, is of having a progressive approach. So I would say that the issue here is that if we remove too many of the guidelines at the same time, it increases the risk. So that is why we're more prudent. However, what we've done, the choices we've made, are lightning that will be applicable everywhere in Quebec on very specific days, most particularly in activities that are outside. Of course, when you start looking, things more closely, certain groups will say, well, why not us? But we can't do that because if we open up everything at the same time, we increase contacts, and I think that the message is really important. The response of Quebecers to vaccination is wonderful. We have to continue. The more recent groups, they have to continue going to get their first dose and also a second dose. It truly is, for me, the solution, and it is a plan to avoid too quick of a confinement as well, because we do have to think about the variants. And when we go to the restaurant, we sit and we speak people who are at our table. When we go to a bar, whether it be a terrace or inside, well, it can happen that you go chat with other people, so there's more contacts in bars.
Bonsoir à vous trois. Monsieur le Premier ministre, souvent, le diable est dans les détails. Pour être très clair, le 25 juin, le masque, c'est dans les maisons qu'on le retire, donc il n'est pas question qu'il y ait une police du masque. On soit en train de vérifier, avez-vous une dose, avez-vous 2 doses. Et le mois d'août, c'est un objectif pas nécessairement
is an objective that is not
necessarily pas de garantie que tout le monde va avoir 2 doses.
We might not reach it. It's not guaranteed that everybody will have 2 doses. Well, what we're saying, and I think that it's a question as well, Quebecers also want to know, is there a risk if I'm somebody else in the house and we've both had our 2 doses? What we're saying is that it's as of the 25th of June, because people will have vaccinated for a certain number of weeks already, so it would be applicable then. But at the end of August, I did say if, I did say if 75% of Quebecers 12 and over will have received both of their doses, then we consider that there is a societal protection. To be very concrete, that means, and I've checked it, a student who will not have received their 2 doses will still be able to go to CEGEP or university because there is a community protection. Dr. Arruda mentioned it. The variants. Are you leaving aside the possibility of a 4th wave, taking into account that we have 11 confirmed cases of the Indian variant who arrived from Nunavut, and right now the people are hospitalized in the Montérégie region? Well, the situation is under control. I think that in total, we've had around 11 cases of Indian variants that have not led to any outbreaks. It's still a possibility. But I would say that we've started very well with this 3rd wave. We know that it is present, the variant. We know as well how to control it. It would seem that that variant is a lot more transmissible, but that it does respond to the vaccines in most cases. So it is possible, but I would say we are going to keep an eye on the epidemiological data. Everything is conditional to that. But it's not very probable right now with what we're experiencing at the stage that we're at and the level of control that we have. But that's why it's so important to control the borders, as the Premier was saying. And that's why it's so important if there are Canadian provinces that still have a lot of cases and that there are Indian variants, we have to be a lot more prudent. And that is how we are going to be dealing with it. And I will say, like every Monday, we had a presentation from the INES as well as the INSPQ, and the experts are planning, in looking at the present situation, that there will be a lowering over the following weeks in the number of cases, hospitalizations, and deaths. So we're headed the right way, according to the experts. Of course, it could change in 2 weeks' time, but now, for the time being, today, the portrait that we have is that the situation will be improved over the following weeks.
La presse canadienne.
Bonjour à vous trois. Tout d'abord, avant que je pose mes questions, juste s'assurer, est-ce qu'il y a d'autres mesures qu'on va
I
apprendre
just
dans
want
les
to make sure, are there any other
communiqués
measures that we'll be learning in communiques later in press releases, or have you revealed everything right now? Well, listen, there can be further details. I'm thinking, for example, places of worship. What I try to do is to not take too long and to just go with the most significant measures, but according to my judgment, the most significant measures have been mentioned. Dr. Arruda, do we have, you really insisted on the importance of the second dose, but are there documented cases in Quebec of people who, having received a first dose, both they contaminated themselves or other people? And if there were cases of contaminations, were there consequences? There are rare cases of people who were vaccinated twice and who may have gotten reinfected as such, but those are very rare cases. These are anecdotes that we look at, that we try to analyze, but I believe that the vaccines that we're using in Quebec, when we give them at the right moment, they offer vaccination coverage that we consider to be significant. And also, if we look at the deconfinement, for example, restaurants, the 20th of May, backyards for 8 people as well, and the 14th of June, people who live in 2 different homes will be able to see one another. What is the difference in risk? Isn't there more risk, for example, because at the end of June, it's going to be all the restaurants are going to be open inside as well? Isn't it pretty much all the same situation of risk, whether we be inside or outside with such a large number of people? Why are we choosing different dates for all this? You mean the restaurants? Well, yes, the restaurants, the terraces that are not the same date as people who can meet on 2 different households, or people who, will be able to all get together inside of a restaurant at the end of June. Isn't that the same level of risk? We've always said that there's more risk inside than outside, and I think that is what we see in the sequence that we've shown you here. So we're starting with outside sports, and then we go with inside sports. So yes, there's more risk inside than outside, yes.
L'épidémiologie actuelle, puis espérons qu'elle va continuer. C'est pour ça qu'on fait des projections.
But with our present epidemiology, what's interesting, and we hope that it will continue, is that beyond what we are announcing as transversal lightening of measures in all regions, people will quickly go to orange, quickly to yellow, and then quickly to green. And the freedoms will become more accentuated. We've given you estimate dates, but honestly, with the portrait that we have right now, we believe that it's the correct perspective with the projections that we have now. You know, it's been a while that certain regions have been a little in orange, and we haven't necessarily automatically, changed it to maintain that decrease of contacts that made it that we have observed a very significant lowering that is very significant right now. And that is why, vaccinate in May, and then freedom with prudence, but freedom and hope for the summer. That is going to be accentuated as of end of June, beginning of July.
Bonjour à vous trois. Écoutez, juste pour clarifier, c'est peut-être moi qui ai mal compris, mais
Just
sur la
to
question
clear things up, maybe I'm not the one who understood correctly, but on the masks, Dr. Arruda, you mentioned that in certain circumstances it would have to be kept outside. That's what I noted. Perhaps I didn't understand properly, and Mr. Legault, as long as I myself have not received 2 doses, if I have people over at my place at home, I have to keep the mask? That's what I understand? Well, ideally, yes. because first, at the beginning, there's going to be more people who are not going to be entirely protected, who might be a risk and who might transmit the illness to you. And the mask, when we recommend it to you, is to protect others, but also yourself. As far as the other question that you asked me initially, the first one, I'm sorry, I forgot. Outside. Well, outside. Let's take an example. In public transportation, let's say that people are very close together and not enough people are vaccinated. That is a typical example of where we could keep people to wear the mask inside. Distancing is often not possible in those places. On the 75% of the second dose by the end of summer, the end of August, is that what the return to normal life is going to be? For example, being able to get over 10 people at home. When can we expect to get that 75% of second dose? Well, 75% of people with 2 doses, what we're targeting is the end of August, beginning of September. Mr. Minister, correct me because you're the one who is dealing more with the campaign. We'll see how the epidemiology is going then. And when we say 10 people, it's 10 people that can be from different households, but 3 households, if ever there are children, and you're more than 2 or 3, there can be a number above 10 if it's 3 family bubbles, 3 households. But as I was saying, we believe that with this we'll be able to come back to a quasi-normal life, and we'll see at the end of August, September, how things are going on to continue.
Là, on parle de 75%
On that aspect, we're talking about 75% of people 12 and over who will have received 2 doses by the end of August. And I understand that we'll have to accelerate things and go more quickly with the administration of the second doses and the issue of vaccination of the 12 to 17-year-olds. So we're going to do that at the end of the school year in their case, as well as the summer? Is that what it is? Mr. Chouinard, this week we're waiting to have the confirmation of the CIQ to know how the vaccination will take place for the 12 to 17-year-olds. We got it today. I think that you saw the press release. So I will be very happy on Thursday to announce, together with Minister McCann and Minister Roberge, will have a specific press conference on Thursday to announce how the vaccination of the 12 to 17-year-olds is going to take place, because we were waiting for the confirmation of the CIQ, and we did said that we would do it. So there's 2 big news, but we'll give you the details on Thursday, because I think that parents are looking forward to hearing that. But generally speaking, we will be able to start probably by the end of May some of the operations where we'll be able to vaccinate people between 12 and 17. But most of that is going to happen in the first 2 or 3 weeks of June. We'll give you more details on Thursday. That's the first thing for what we'll call the first dose for 12 to 17-year-olds. The second dose, we would like to do the reverse, so that between mid-August and end of August, depending on how we'll agree with the school system, so that by the end of August, as the Premier said, both doses for people 12 to 17 will have been given, so that back to school can be done with people with 2 doses. That is our objective. Well, my question, maybe just a clarification. There's a lot of people who have their second, their appointment for the second dose in September. Yes, but the good news is that everything keeps going well and that we have extra vaccines that are planned. I'll just give you, the order of things, just generally. Right now, what we are doing for second doses are the RPAs. The RPAs, as I said, end of May, early June, that should be completed. That is the good news for the second doses. Afterward, we'll be able to go with second doses, as I explained, for other healthcare staff that remain. And essentially, after that, we'll be to start the first dose with the 12 to 17-year age group. And I think that we'll have enough extra doses to start our second doses even before the end of June. That's very good news. And that is why, since we thought that we would end, by the 24th of June, we believe that between the 15th and the 30th of June, we will be able to start giving out second doses, which means that if everything goes well, And up until now, it is going well. We may be able to accelerate people who had appointments for the second dose in September. We may be able to bring them back to August. That is our objective, and I have asked Mr. Paré to explain how we'll be able to do that. Because there's all sorts of things. People can either go to a walk-in clinic, but I think that everybody who had appointments later in September, I think we'll be able to bring them all back to August.
Quand vous dites la majorité des
The cover
régions
zones,
vont
when you say
passer là,
most
en
regions
orange, puis
will be
la
going
majorité
to
des
orange
régions
and most regions will
jaune,
go
en
to
vert.
yellow and
Vraiment qu'il y a des
green.
gens à Montréal qui se demandent.
Probably
Là,
there
nous
are
autres,
people in
on a
Montreal
été
wondering,
pris dans le
okay,
rouge pendant un
well,
bon bout de temps. Là,
we've been
est-ce
stuck
que
in red for a while
c'est une
now.
séquence de dates
Is
qui
that a
exclut
sequence
Montréal ou
of
certaines
states that
autres régions?
excludes
Ou
Montreal
est-ce que
or
vous
any
pensez
other specific regions?
réalistement
Or
que
do you
la majorité des
believe
régions,
realistically
ça veut
that
dire
most
toutes les
regions
régions?
means all
Montréal
regions?
et Laval aussi.
Well,
J'aimerais
it
dire
includes
que,
Montreal
tout
and
va dépendre
Laval.
de l'épidémie, bien
I would like to
entendu.
say that
Il pourrait toujours
everything
y
will
avoir une
depend
semaine
on
de
the
plus, dépendamment de
epidemiological
l'épidémie.
situation. There might
Mais
be
ce
an
que je
extra
veux
week
aussi
depending on
insister
that.
pour que la
But
population
also,
comprenne,
what
c'est
I
qu'on y
wish to
va
reiterate so that
avec des
people
mesures
understand
à
is that
l'extérieur
we
qu'on
are
donne un peu
going
partout.
with measures
Il faut
outside that we're
respecter quand
giving
même
pretty
en
much
mai
to
et
everyone.
en juin
We still have
les
to
mesures, parce que
respect
c'est ça qui va
the
permettre
measures
qu'on
in
va être
May and
rendu
June because
au
that is
vert
what
plus tard.
will
Je sais pas si vous
allow us
comprenez, parce que
to
si
get
les
to
gens
green
se
later.
mettent à se
If
comporter en
people
vert dès
start
fin
behaving
mai,
as if they
début
were
juin,
living in a
à ce
green
moment-là, le
zone
nombre de
at
contacts
the end
augmente,
of
on
May or
peut
beginning
revoir
of June, will increase the number of contacts, and we could see an increase in the numbers. And so we sincerely think that seeing the trends that are, downward, we believe that even regions like Montreal and Laval will be able to change color zones. We're giving ourselves freedoms, and that's important, but we have to respect those freedoms that we give ourselves and not go more, so that we don't increase our contact with others in May in a significant way, either May or June, because it could re-increase the caseload, and we don't want
Oui,
that.
messieurs, juste sur cette question-là, donc, c'est pas impossible si
So on
une
that question,
région
it's not
s'achauffe, ben,
impossible
elle change de
if a
couleur
region
ou
where things are
on
going
resserre
badly,
les
it'll
mesures dans
change
une
color,
région.
or we tighten up the measures in one region. That remains a possibility.
Oui, effectivement. C'est pour ça qu'on
Well,
dit la majorité des
yes, that's
régions.
why
On
we're
espère
saying
que ça va être
most
toutes les
regions.
régions où
We
on va
hope
pouvoir
that it will
respecter
be
ces
all
dates-là,
regions
mais on dit
where
au
we'll
moins une
be able to
majorité.
respect
Mais
those
s'il y
dates,
avait un
but we say at
problème
least a majority. But if there
particulier
were
dans
to
une
be a
région, cette
problem
région-là,
in a
le
region,
passage du rouge au orange,
well,
au jaune,
going
au vert,
from
pourrait être
orange
retardé
to
d'une semaine.
from red to orange and yellow and green might be delayed by a week.
Pour le ministre Dubé, le fameux code
Another
QR,
question
quand
for
les
Minister
terrasses vont
Dubé,
ouvrir, les
the
salles de
QR
spectacle,
code,
est-ce que
when
le propriétaire
terraces
de
open
salle de spectacle peut
and show
demander
venues,
aux
can the
clients
owners
de leur montrer
ask
leur code?
clients to show them
Vous
that
savez que je vais
QR
vous
code?
répondre qu'on n'est pas encore rendu là parce qu'on
Well,
attend
you know
toujours
that I'm going to say we're not
l'opinion
there
du,
yet because we're still
de
waiting
la
for
santé
the
publique
opinion
de façon
of
globale. La bonne
public
nouvelle,
health.
je vous dis,
But
aujourd'hui,
the
je
good
regardais
news
les
is,
statistiques. Là, il y a
today I
à peu
was
près
looking at the
300 000
statistics.
personnes qui ont reçu
There's about
leur code QR
300,000
après
people who
l'avoir
have
demandé.
received their QR code
Pas
after
plus
having
tard
requested
qu'aujourd'hui,
it.
parce qu'il y en a qui m'ont demandé comment ça se fait que
Even
moi,
by
j'ai
today,
pas
because some
encore
people
reçu le
asked me
mien.
how come I
On
still
commence
haven't received
depuis
mine.
hier.
So
Ce matin,
we
je
have
pense qu'on a
started.
envoyé
We started
près de
yesterday. I
400
think that
000
this morning we
courriels
sent close
à
to
des gens là, qui l'ont
400,000
reçu
emails
avant
to
qu'on
people who
commence la semaine
had
dernière. Donc, vous
received
allez commencer à le
before we
recevoir. On
started
veut
last
aussi
week. So you will
s'assurer,
start
Monsieur Bossé,
getting
que
this
tout le monde
information. We
a
also
bien
want to make
reçu
sure
aussi
that
la preuve de
everybody
sa vaccination.
has
Ça va prendre
received
encore quelques
the
semaines.
proof
Mais je vous
of
donne
their
un exemple
vaccination.
comme
That will still
aujourd'hui,
take a
là,
few weeks, but I'm
content,
giving
on
you
a
an
vu que
example. Like
300 000
today,
l'avaient demandé,
I'm
ils
happy
l'ont reçu.
we saw that
Donc, on a envoyé un
300,000
autre
people
400 000
asked for the
courriels.
QR code and
Là, les gens
received it,
vont
and
commencer
now
à le
we've sent
recevoir.
out another 400,000
Oui,
emails,
il
so
faut
people
le
are going to start
demander.
getting it.
Est-ce que les
So you have to ask for it? Yes, you have to
Non, je comprends
request
très
it.
bien votre
Okay.
question. Je vous dis qu'il est un petit
Because
peu trop tôt
entrepreneurs
pour
and
faire
stuff.
le lien,
No, I
mais
understand your
on
question,
attend la
but it's
réponse
too
de la
early
santé.
to answer. We're waiting
Je vais faire
for
doublage sur la
an
question de mon collègue,
answer
Marco
on
Bellas.
public
C'est donc
health.
de voir
I'm going to
Dr.
piggyback on my
Est-ce
colleague's
qu'un
question. Dr.
restaurateur
Aruda,
peut
a restaurant
empêcher
owner,
l'entrée dans son
could they
établissement à
prevent
quelqu'un qui n'a pas été vacciné? Est-ce qu'un chef
that
d'entreprise
somebody who will not
connaît
have
qui vont
received a
procéder à des
vaccine
embauches
come into
en
the
vue de la
restaurant?
saison estivale avec les mesures
Companies are going to be
d'assouplissement que
hiring
vous
people
annoncez
for the
aujourd'hui,
summer with
peut
the
fixer
measures
comme
that you're
condition
announcing today.
d'embauche le
Can
vaccin?
they have
Est-ce
as a
qu'un
hiring condition that the
organisateur
person
de
has to
camp
be
de jour
vaccinated?
peut exiger
An
que
organizer
le
of day
jeune
camps, for
ait reçu
example,
sa
can they
première dose
require
avant de
that
participer à des
the
activités? Bref,
young
est-ce que la
people have
discrimination
received their
sur la
first
base
dose
du vaccin
before
est possible, voire
participating in activities. So briefly, is discrimination based on vaccination, is it possible or even encouraged? Well, it's not encouraged. Discrimination is not encouraged. It's quite clear. And first, I would tell you that there's not enough people who have received a second dose to really be able to talk about vaccination evidence. The work is ongoing, but what we want to avoid, I mean, there are labor standards, and if we use vaccination in a discriminatory context, it could be problematic. To what extent private companies in non-essential services could make that a hiring condition? Well, there might be legal debates on that, but what we believe that is most important, without denying that there may be uses, the vaccination passport, we're still thinking about it. We count on a greater majority of vaccinated people who will be protecting those who are not, because there is a proportion of people who cannot be vaccinated for medical reasons. I just want to say two things. There will be vaccination evidence that will be complete when 2 doses will have been given. And I invite people, because we're very happy with the first 75% that we have reached. But since we do have the available vaccines, I would say to everyone, including young people, go get as quickly as possible your first dose for those who still haven't done it, because we do still have people left in those categories. But to everyone, the minute that you can get your second dose, that is where you'll get the vaccination proof, and that's what's important. Mr. Dubé, you're the Minister for Health and the former President of the Treasury, so you know very well there are many state-owned enterprises have slowed down. For example, casinos, which are an employer of many thousands of Quebecers. During the reopening of casinos or any other, for example, the Société des Alcools, could a state-owned enterprise ask people who are being called back as a priority that the first people called back that they be vaccinated? Well, listen, it is such an important question that for the time being, I prefer not answering. We said that we were waiting for the opinion of public health, and for me, I think that that is what we're waiting for. Once we have a global overview of what we can do, but it's going to be the end of August until everybody has the opportunity to get a second dose. So for somebody to be vaccinated adequately, we have to give everybody the opportunity of getting the second dose. Okay, clarification. During the summer, because I understand that you'll be announcing your decision very soon, but there are people who are hiring right now. So right now, people cannot require that people be vaccinated? No, not at all. And that's why we have to have the technical tool when we make use of it. And what I'm very happy to see is that there's already 300,000 people who have required it. And we have sent very few emails up until now. So you're going to see that that will change over the next few days. There are people writing, I've received it. So that's good news. It's happening right now. Sorry if there's repetition. I wanted to see with you the 2-week waiting for the end of the curfew. What justifies that? Why don't we just remove the curfew right away? As we said, because we want to do things progressively. That is with that perspective in mind. It has to be understood that in Quebec there are still places where there are emergency measures in effect. We have not come back to that in all places, and of course we're doing it during a period where the days are getting longer, but it really is to avoid what we call, too quick of a lightning. Okay, so right now it's status quo. Those that are in dark red, it's a status quo. Things don't change until the dates that you gave earlier. Yes, except for the lower St. Lawrence that had some schools that were closed. Okay, for funerals now. I've received emails from funeral homes and families that were wondering why, since last spring, things have not changed much on that front. Certain were limited to 10, others to 25. Where are we at with that? Will we be able to have larger ceremonies? Well, there's going to be protocols. We had, what we called one session of ceremonies. Now we'll be able to have extra sessions with
comme tel, on est en train de revoir ça avec les
families, there's fewer contacts, but we're reviewing all of that with the funeral associations, and it'll be announced. And of course, as we go forward in the season, the more we'll be able to go back to what I would call as normal a ceremony as possible so that people can grieve. And just to end with festivals and events, car races, we saw promoters that wanted to have events. Is there another conference that is planned to specify festivals and all that, or is that going to just be the 25th of June? Well, we're talking about the 25th of June, yes, except if there are assigned seats. If there are assigned seats, whether it be inside or outside, there can be sections of 250 people with a total of 205,000 people, and that is as of the 28th of May.
Précision en français. Oui, Monsieur le ministre.
J'aurais pas la prétention qu'on va remplacer la F1.
Don't pretend that we're going to replace F1, but we will be announcing something very interesting tomorrow morning. I'm not going to give you all the details today. I am going to give you a teaser, but we will be announcing tomorrow at the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve, not to replace F1, but we're going to have a vaccination clinic that is going to be lasting over 3 weekends as of the 29th of May, and people will be able to come and get vaccinated in their car, but also on their bikes. So, since it is a place that has a lot of people there, it will give people the opportunity to see the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve, and I will be there tomorrow morning with the Mayor Valérie Plante. We're going to give you more details of how things will take place over the 3 following weekends, because we have seen that it is perhaps a combination of walk-in clinics as well as appointments, once again to be able to welcome as many Quebecers as possible to get their vaccination shots. Yes, there will be a press conference for tourism and culture that will give you clarification about everything in link with festivals. It's been announced. And I'm told that people are asking us a lot of questions on gyms. Just to remind you that gyms are open once you get to orange zone. And since we progress quickly, it will be an element. So, yes, we will have a press conference from Isabelle Charret on sports to give you all the details. That's quite a media program. So, just some clarification questions? Yes, question for restaurant owners. You open up a terrace, and there's a storm. What happens?
La question m'a été posée aussi.
The question was asked.
Non, mais elle m'a été posée en anticipant, par exemple, à la maison, etc. Moi, je pense qu'il faut se servir de gros bon sens, un gros orage. Je pense que les gens, à ce moment-là, pourront prendre leur masque et venir se réfugier au moment où c'est ça. Si on est dans une journée où il pleut depuis le début, que la terrasse ne peut pas être ouverte,
raining all day and the terrace is open, we're not going to say we're going to open the restaurant inside, but something that is unplanned, I think that there is a way, while respecting the guidelines inside,
Peut-être une précision, Monsieur Dubé, sur l'AstraZeneca.
Clarification, Mr. Dubé, on the AstraZeneca. Do we understand that the doses to be received is still limited, and there won't be any others after, from what I've understood? So how is that going to work? People who receive that vaccination as a first dose, will they have the opportunity of having a second dose more quickly? How are you planning that out? I understand that we have not yet received the study on the interchangeability of doses either. Well, we're pretty advanced on that. I perhaps will send them or ask Horatio to answer. But the main principle, if you'll recall, in February we had the first delivery of AstraZeneca zones, the Covishield vaccine, about 100,000 people, and it was done mainly in RPAs and intermediary resources. What we are offering is to those people to be able to see whether they want to have this vaccine as a second dose. But it must be remembered that we're going to get, I think, 148,000 doses. So if we have any left, because there are people who don't want to have it as a second dose, we'll be able to offer it to the other group of people, which is of about 400,000 people. So I think that the reality that we will be faced with is that between the first group of 100,000 and the second group of 100,000, there won't be any AstraZeneca left. So what I understand is
n'auront pas le choix
people who
d'avoir
did
une
get
deuxième dose d'un
AstraZeneca
autre
won't have
vaccin.
any choice but to get a second dose of another
Probablement
vaccine.
pas, parce que si vous comptez le nombre de
Yeah,
personnes à qui on
probably,
a
because if
donné
you
de
count the number of people to whom we've given
500 000
AstraZeneca as a first dose,
on va
which is
en avoir
about 500,000
148 000.
people,
Alors,
and we're going to
on
get
va l'offrir à ceux qui l'ont
148,000,
déjà eu,
we'll
puis
offer it to
ensuite,
people
ben,
who
on
have already
passera
received it, and after that
au
we
Pfizer
will
ou au Moderna.
go to Pfizer or
J'aimerais ça vous entendre sur l'état
Moderna.
d'urgence.
I'd like to hear you on the state of emergency to know how long it's going to last. I know it's an exceptional measure with exceptional powers. When do you believe that the measure will no longer be necessary? Are we going to have to wait until a double vaccination?
Faut bien comprendre qu'elle a
Well, the
toutes
state of
sortes
emergency, it has
d'impacts.
to be understood that it has all sorts of
Sur notre
impacts. It has an
personnel,
impact on our
aussi sur
staff.
les primes qui sont
It also has
payées,
an impact on the
à
premiums that are
notre
paid
personnel
out
notamment. Elle a un
to our
impact,
staff.
entre autres,
It
sur
has
les
an
différentes
impact
mesures qui nous
on
permettent
the different
je vais aller
measures
jusqu'à
that
dire que
allow
sur
us
l'information qu'on
to,
reçoit, etc.
even on the
Donc, on est
information
en
that we
train de
receive.
regarder
So
comment
we
on va
are
pouvoir passer
looking
à
at how we'll be
l'après,
able to go
si je peux l'appeler
to
le
the
2.0. Mais
post,
en
if
ce
you
moment,
will, the
tant qu'on n'a pas
2.0.
réglé
But for the
notamment,
time being, as long as we have
nos
not
conventions
dealt with
collectives avec le Conseil du
our
Trésor,
collective
je pense que
agreements
c'est un
with
peu
the
prématuré
Treasury Board,
pour
I think that it
avoir la
is too
flexibilité qui
premature right
nous a
now
été
to have the
donnée
flexibility
par ça,
that was
avec une très,
granted
très
to
grande
us by that,
collaboration des syndicats, je dois
with
le
a
dire, dans les
very
derniers
great
mois.
collaboration
Fait que c'est
from
quelque
the
chose en ce
unions in
moment
the
qu'on
past few
discute,
months, I have to
et
say.
avec le
So it is
cabinet
something
du
that we're
Premier ministre,
talking
mais
about right
aussi
now
avec le Trésor,
with
pour être
the
sûr que
Premier's
lorsqu'on
cabinet, but
passera
also
à
the
l'après
Treasury, to make sure that
ben,
when
qu'on
we
a
go
tous
to
les
the
moyens de continuer
post-COVID
à bien travailler
era,
ensemble.
we have all
On passe
means
en
to be able
anglais,
to
quitte à
keep
revenir en
working
français par la
well
suite. Philippe
in
Autier
health.
de Gazette.
We will now switch
Good
to
evening.
English.
We're getting to a point in the vaccination process where many people are have been vaccinated, but some of this is incidental information. But there are people that are still reluctant to get the shot. What would be your tolerance level? Perhaps Mr. Dubé or Mr. Arruda, what is the tolerance level for the proportion of the population going around unvaccinated? Have you projected that, and is that in any way a problem?
This is something before passing the buck to Dr. Arruda. I just want to say the Premier has been very clear. This is unbelievable that we already have 75%, including the appointment. But I think in the last 2 weeks, the people that are 40 years old and under are still below 75%. So I would say the first thing is to get those people vaccinated. I think I would challenge them that 60 and above are in the 85-90%. And I think it's just a matter of time, because usually that takes about a month for the age group to get vaccinated. So let's start to make sure that, yes, we have 75% in total, but the younger groups are still at 50, 55, and 60%. So let's make sure, and I take this opportunity tonight to just say, please get vaccinated, because then after that you are allowed to go to the second dose. I'll let Horacio.
But in a standard pandemic, how many people eventually do not ever get vaccinated?
And I would say that there is in Quebec, I would say 5 to 10% of people who can really not want it. The others are ones who are hesitating. They are waiting. They are postponing the thing to see what is going on with this. So, but I think we're going to have good coverage. I think if you have a 75 in all stage, that will be great, because it's a new vaccine. It's a new disease. People have some fears, but I really think we're going to get good rates. And as my minister, I think the youth will surprise us. And I want to say thank you to the youth. They will surprise us because they want to have a normal life, and they know that vaccination is part of a normal life.
I understand that you're not particularly worried about the Ontario border, but with everything that is reopening, have you assessed the risk factors of the plan? How would you evaluate it? What level of risk is it with applying your measures that go right to August?
In fact, we are not recommending travels that are not non-necessary. We are not telling Quebecers to go to Ontario where there is a lot of more cases, where there is more variants. So we are still thinking that we can do our things in Quebec. I think there will always be some movement because essential travelers or workers on things like that. But for the moment, I think it's not the time to go over there, and it's not the time for them to come here too.
Katsani, CBC.
Good day. On June 25th, when people who received 2 doses will be able to gather inside without a mask and distanciation, what are your expectations, Premier Legault, with the fact that maybe in this group, 1 person or more people would not have their 2nd dose? And what are your expectations about what should happen if you have a family gathering together on June 25th, but not everybody has their the 2nd famous dose on that day?
I expect the majority will follow the rules, but even right now, I know that some people don't. So I think it's important for your security, for your own security, to respect those rules. If you don't have the 2 doses, you're protected at 80%. So I think it's a question of risk. And I would suggest to my mother or to somebody I love to not meet until you have the 2 doses.
So that means not meeting for the whole summer, depending when we'll get the 2nd dose.
But I don't want to speak for Christian, but of course, if things go well, we'll be able to give the opportunity to people to get their 2nd dose sooner.
Okay. I understand.
No pressure.
You do have a lot of pressure.
I have
here.
a lot of pressure, but I know the gentleman a bit, so that's all right.
Oh boy, oh boy.
That's
okay,
right.
On May 28th and June 11th, with the terraces of restaurants reopening and then bars, well, you said that if there's a storm, well, everybody can come inside.
In fact, it's going to be rare situations. Okay, I think if it's
You don't know this.
But no, I know, but I don't expect it's going to be.
At least it won't be snow.
Okay, yes, but what I want to say is that if it's a rainy day and we know it's going to be a rainy day, it doesn't mean you open your restaurant inside and you let, you know, that's not the thing. But let's be logical. There is people, they are outside in the terrace. There is a restaurant, there is a storm coming on. We won't let people get all wet. They can take their mask and get inside, try to be in distanciation, wait for what's going on and go back outside. I think it's going to be probably the way to react. I think that's the best way. We will not send the police to check that. And about the meetings at home without mask, what I would say is that you will receive probably people you have trust to. In your families or trusting. But if you're an older person and you're afraid of getting the disease, but you are not obliged to do that, because in fact, if you are not sure those persons are not vaccinated, there is always a risk.
But also, we're talking about, in fact, 1 weekend, because we're talking about terraces of restaurants being open on May the 28th. But we say on May the 31, most of the region will be orange, which means restaurants inside will be open.
Raquel Fletcher, Global News.
Good evening, everyone. I just want to pick up on some of the questions that my colleagues have already asked, but just to put a finer point on it, you mentioned that you're opening gradually out of prudence. That's the word that you used, Mr. Legault. But you are going from red to orange to yellow to green quite quickly. What is the concern that once once the curfew is lifted and once some of these first restrictions are lifted, people will start to say, okay, pandemic's over, and start to let their guard down. How important is that prudence?
Okay, first, I want to repeat that we had a very important presentation from INES and INSPQ last night, and they've made some assumptions, for example, with our measures of the next 3 weeks, and the situation is getting better in their forecast for the next few weeks. So we think that first, we wait until the 28th of May before opening a bit. Then after that, it's every 2 weeks. So we think that it's prudent, and we expect that with this plan, we'll be all right to have everything in control until July.
And you expect people to follow that as well?
But, like restaurants and different places, I think that people won't have the choice if it's not open. Regarding homes, of course, when we lift the curfew on the 28th, yes, there may be a risk associated with parties during all the night.
Je vais maintenant lire une...
My second question, Marco, my second question is about the Prime Minister of Canada reacted today to Bill 96, saying that if Quebec is within its rights and within its means to amend the Constitution, as long as minority languages are still protected. Are you happy about what the Prime Minister had to say about Bill 96?
Yes, I'm happy because he confirmed that we were right when we said that we can unilaterally amend the Constitution to say two things, that first, Quebec is a nation, and second, that the official language is French in Quebec. So, of course, we're happy to see that the Prime Minister of Canada recognized that we had the right to do so.
Oui, s'il vous plaît.
Oui, ben écoutez, j'étais content de voir que le Premier ministre du Canada
Well, listen, I was happy to see that the Prime Minister of Canada has confirmed that Quebec has the right to amend the 1867 Constitution to say two things, that Quebec is a nation and that French is the official language in Quebec. So I'm very happy that the Prime Minister recognizes that we had the right to do that. I will now read a question.
Borders remaining closed to international and even interprovincial travel for the time being. What criteria will need to be in place before you be comfortable welcoming non-essential visitors from outside of Quebec?
Of course, we watch what's happening in other provinces. The situation is getting better in Ontario, but it's still worse than in Quebec. Internationally, but of course, when we say what's happening in India and in certain countries, we don't want that the borders open, and we want that the measures of quarantine stay in place.
5 minutes. Olivier Bossé, Le Soleil.
Retour dans le travail au bureau. Où est-ce que ça se trouve dans le déconfinement?
Where is the going back to the office work in this plan? Well, when we go to orange to yellow in the document, working from home becomes a possibility, so rather than being mandatory. So it will give both employers and employees the choice of either going toward, the 2-3 day mix. So we'll see how things go in the summer, because there are employers who would love to have all their employees, but there are also employees that would love to be able to get out of the house a little bit and go to the office. So you'll see It's when we go to yellow that it becomes optional and no longer mandatory. And also with orange zones and the opening of gyms, there's also the yoga studios that are included in that. I don't know where the yoga studios are. Well, the list of always to know whether it's a dual activity or not. What I understand is that it is in orange, yes. And the reconfinement, you talked early on about the risk that there may be zones where there are outbreaks or some regions that will be more affected than others and will have to tighten measures again. Could we understand that those places could be deconfined or reconfined again, that there are zones where they will still be playing yo-yo? Well, I don't want us to play yo-yo, but it could happen that in a region or other, we not deconfine as quickly, but for the time being, we do not plan on tightening up the measures again, on going backward. One clarification, could you talk about the link between the end of the emergency measures and the signing of a new collective agreement? Well, it's because one of the things that we have in our health measures is everything having to do with premiums. So, of course, we are in collective bargaining right now. My colleague, Madame Lebel, is working on that quite a bit. So, of course, we want to know what will happen with the collective agreements for the acquisition of premiums, because everything having to do with that is linked to the health guidelines. But I thought it had to do that it was linked to the epidemiology. Well, it is one of the things, but we've paid the equivalent of about 2 million premiums that has been paid over the health measures for those health guidelines. So, of course, there is a factor of that. This puts an end to the press conference. Thank you very much. Wishing everybody a good evening.